Well, let's get more reaction and analysis to this. Joining us now is Richard Downing, an economist from the SA Chamber of Commerce and Industry.
All right, Richard, thank you very much for joining us this morning on eNCA. Is it a surprise that we are not going to meet the deadline? When we do see projects of this magnitude, we know there are normally delays. What is the market priced in?
Well, I think it's no surprise. We could see this coming, if you have construction on strike every now and then, and other problems emerging, in terms of building Medupi, which is very critical at this stage, then we have problems, because the problem is already that it's not a sudden thing that we're experiencing. I mean, if you take electricity supply at the moment, if you put it on an index basis, if you had 100, say, units supplied in 2010, it now stands at 96. So there's already short supply. And to meet that short supply, you have to manage your demand. And what I'm worried about is a lot of that demand management, or load shedding, whatever you want to call it, is at the expense of business, at the manufacturing sector, at the mining sector. And that is where we're actually losing out, because there's jobs at stake. And the extra cost is just it's at 15 billion rand at this stage, being late on this project. So that's already the direct cost, but the indirect cost is much larger than all this. And I mean, we actually have electricity demand at levels that can't be met actually by supply, and with a reserve of only 1%, as I understand. That is very, very walking a tightrope on electricity supply.
Mr. Downing, we're also hearing from the ministry and also Eskom itself that they're going to reclaim this money from the contractors, which are invariably being blamed for this delay. Ultimately, though, would it not be fair to say that the consumer is down the road at some stage going to pick up extra cost to maintain and also keep Medupi potentially on track the next time we get a new date?
Yeah, well, it's like that. The money can't come from thin air. I mean, right. So somewhere, it comes from people who's constructing that Medupi power station, and eventually, it'll come from the consumer's pocket. So the incidence of tax is always in the last instance on the consumer, and that's the worrying. This is not a tax; it's a tariff, and it's so a broad-based tariff actually that it affects everybody. And it affects the consumer, it affects actually your trade industry, your manufacturing, mining, whatever. So that is, you can demand whatever you like, but there's a cost associated with this type of not being on time with contracts. Time is actually money, and that we should understand.
When you look at managing supply, and you were talking about this just a short while ago, we know if there isn't enough electricity supply in the country, it affects from construction to the consumers, basically. And we know that one of the industries that is hardest hit, you mentioned manufacturing, the construction industry overall. If we keep seeing further delays, because this might happen, we know especially when it comes to these big projects, what will the effect on growth be? Do you think we could quantify it into a specific number?
Well, it's difficult to quantify, but I think what we're seeing at the moment, we're at levels of about 1% growth in GDP, and that is covering all the sectors. And if you look at manufacturing, we had a once-off 7% in April, but that was, an exceptional sort of increase. But our manufacturing sector is operating at levels not near enough, to keep the economy going and to create jobs. And therefore also other sectors. I mean, if you have outages or load shedding again like we had in 2007, then we're in big trouble. And I think that's the problem we must look at. We must be on time. We must anticipate now already what will be the position in 10 years' time. Not wait for 10 years to go by and then start thinking about what's the problem. So I think that's why we're at this stage, in this predicament we have, in terms of energy supply. And it's very important also for investors, foreign as well as local investors. If you don't have certainty on electricity and energy supplies, then you have a big problem. And I think we should, this is a very sort of problem area that we must actually have something done about it very soon, or otherwise we're going to experience more troubles in terms of economic growth, as you've said.
Well, Mr. Richard Downing from Millennia and I, we thank you for the moment, for your time making sense of it. Economist from the SA Chamber of Commerce and Industry.
All right, so not good
news that moves. eNCA.com.